You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we of course all know about this bombshell Supreme Court ruling blocking nationwide injunctions. That means if the Trump administration does something illegal, one judge can't say this is illegal, we're going to block it across the entire country. So importantly, what are the implications of this law moving forward, and are any of them overblown?
Brian, that's the perfect question, because I don't think the Supreme Court ruling is as bad or as dire or as dramatic as it may appear if all you hear is the Supreme Court ruled against birthright citizenship. That's not what they did. This is a procedural ruling. And what it says, Brian, is that if one litigant, let's use the example that's used in the opinion itself, a pregnant woman who's undocumented and who's about to give birth, and the Constitution says that child, when they are born in the United States, is a United States citizen, unless you give Donald Trump's executive order effect, rewriting the Constitution and canceling out of it the guarantee of birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court said in that circumstance that that plaintiff, that pregnant woman, can certainly bring suit and can try to protect the rights of her soon-to-be newborn child. However, what you can't do is procedurally sweep everybody else up into that suit without them being a named plaintiff, because the Supreme Court claims, at least the majority, 6 justices claim, that kind of exceeds the power that Congress granted to the federal judiciary. That's open to debate, but that's what they said. But most importantly, Brian, and this is what our viewers should hold fast to and take some comfort in, they suggested, but you can accomplish the same dang thing by just making it a class action. So, for example, if you get a series of plaintiffs, pregnant women who may be undocumented, but they may have been living here for decades, working, paying taxes, committing no crimes, doing everything right, and they're about to give birth, you can have a judge certify as a class all women who are similarly situated, and as long as the judge grants class certification, now that right extends to them all, and they're all part of this lawsuit, and they will be properly covered procedurally speaking. I know I'm dwelling on this, but this is an intensely procedural issue and ruling by the Supreme Court. It does not say Donald Trump's executive order canceling the guarantee of birthright citizenship from the Constitution is lawful and constitutional. It simply says when these suits are brought in court, they have to be brought in a different way procedurally. And Brian, here's the thing, literally within 2 hours of that Supreme Court ruling coming down, there have already been amended lawsuits, amended complaints filed in multiple federal jurisdictions. I predict you're going to see class action lawsuits in all 13 federal jurisdictions very soon. But you have organizations who are already hard at work in making sure they comply with this new Supreme Court procedural ruling. You've got the Institute for Constitutional Advocacy at Georgetown Law. You've got the Democracy Defenders Fund, Norm Eisen's group. You've got the ACLU. You've got the NAACP Defense Fund. They're already filing suits, some within 2 hours of the Supreme Court ruling. So I would urge people, don't despair, because this is not a ruling of substance. It's simply a ruling of procedure that I don't like, because it seems to me if one person's constitutional rights are being violated by Donald Trump trying to revoke with his Sharpie a constitutional right that we all clearly enjoy under the express language of the Constitution, well, everybody should be protected. Everybody shouldn't have to run into court or become part of a class action just to have their constitutional rights honored and respected. But you know what? If that's what the Supreme Court wants procedurally, F them. That's what lawyers are going to give them.
I mean, it does seem like I understand that this is certainly a valid kind of alternative route. And I had spoken with Norm Eisen on Friday about how he's representing, in conjunction with the ACLU and the NAACP and other organizations, and him on behalf of Democracy Defenders Fund, have already begun introducing class action lawsuits in the absence of the ability of these federal judges to issue nationwide injunctions. But it still puts the onus it puts the onus on these individual litigants all over the country, instead of a judge being able to say, hey, what the Trump administration is doing is illegal, and so I'm going to block you from being able to do that. Now the onus goes on to all of these individual people who, by the way, may not have the ability or the know-how to find a lawyer, may not have the funds to be able to navigate the legal system, or may be afraid of getting in front of an administration that has shown itself to be perfectly willing to retaliate against people. And so doesn't that still seem fundamentally unfair, that now a judge can't just say, no, that's illegal, you can't do it, but now we just have to wait for individual litigants across the country to be able to find lawyer up and take on this administration affirmatively?
Yeah, and you just previewed where I want to go next, the fundamental unfairness, because that was highlighted by Justice Sotomayor in her dissent. And, ordinarily I'll urge our viewers to read important court rulings that come down, but boy, this one is long, and there are separate concurrences and separate dissents issued by, Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Alito, Justice Thomas. Amy Coney Barrett authored the majority opinion. Then there's a dissent by Justice Sotomayor. There's a dissent by Justice Ketanji Brown. I mean, there's a lot of writing in this one, and it is very dense. But I pulled out two passages that I want to share with our viewers, because I think first it goes to your point. Doesn't this seem unfair that if one person's constitutional rights are being violated by Donald Trump rewriting the Constitution, without having the authority to do it, shouldn't everybody automatically be protected? And that's kind of where the disagreement comes in between the six-justice majority and the minority, the dissenters. So let me just read these two different passages. The first is from Amy Coney Barrett, and I want to take a minute to slowly work our way through this, because this gets a little bit dense. I want to translate it from legalese to English. She's talking about something called complete relief for a plaintiff, and let's continue to use the hypothetical of a pregnant, undocumented woman who's about to give birth. Complete relief for her when she brings a lawsuit versus universal relief for everyone who might be similarly situated. Now, this is before a class action lawsuit is filed. Here's
Right.
what Amy Coney Barrett says. She says, here, prohibiting enforcement of the executive order against the child of an individual pregnant plaintiff will give that plaintiff complete relief. Her child will not be denied citizenship. Put a pin in that. That's an important phrase. But Amy Coney Barrett continues, but extending the injunction to cover all similarly situated individuals would not render her relief any more complete. Now, remember, that's written in the context of not a class action, right?
Right.
But rather just an injunction in a case involving one pregnant woman that a judge then says, and I'm going to issue this injunction nationwide to just cover everybody and every jurisdiction. Here is what Judge Sotomayor says in response to that. Okay, so your ruling suggests that constitutional guarantees might not apply to anyone who isn't a party to the lawsuit, to which I say, Brian, this is the point you just made. I missed the part of the Equal Protection Clause in the Constitution that says all persons enjoy equal protection of the law. I missed the clause that says only if they file a lawsuit.
Right.
Right? So that's where the unfairness comes in. But where I said put a pin in it, Brian, here is what I want to tease out, and I want to hand this to our viewers. Amy Coney Barrett talked affirmatively about the constitutional guarantee of birthright citizenship when she said her child will not be denied citizenship in a case that she, the single plaintiff, brings. That, to me, sounds a hell of a lot like Amy Coney Barrett tipping her hand and saying, when we get to the issue of whether Donald Trump can cancel the constitutional guarantee of birthright citizenship, we're going to rule against him. Right now, we're in this preliminary procedural posture about how everybody gets to assert their rights. And we're going to require more of them. We're going to require class actions, not just an individual plaintiff bringing a case that will then automatically apply to everybody nationwide. And procedurally, I don't have a huge concern or beef with that, as long as they say, now that you've touched the procedural base that we are requiring, we get to rule that Donald Trump's attempt to rewrite the Constitution fails and falls. And that, to me, is what Amy Coney Barrett sounds like she is forecasting. I don't want to read too much into it, but I don't know why I ever have confidence that the Supreme Court is ultimately going to get something right. But for gosh sakes, if they say Donald Trump can take a Sharpie and cross out any part of the damn Constitution he wants, and we don't give a rat's ass, says the Supreme Court, at least 6 of us, well, then we're completely screwed.
I think, too, what's most striking here is that they know full well that whereas nationwide injunctions for Trump's illegal orders, like this idea that he can write away birthright citizenship, that would cover everybody. But if you have to wait for these plaintiffs to become a party to class action lawsuits, that's going to strip away 99.9% of people, because the reality is they're not going to go and find attorneys. They might not be able to afford attorneys. Again, they might not want to be able to get in the sights of this administration that they know is going to be willing to retaliate against them. They might not know how to do it. And so there's so many reasons. There's so many impediments to people being able to become a party to these class action lawsuits that the reality is the vast majority never will. And I think the Trump administration and the Supreme Court justices know that full well. And so while they're pretending, they're putting up this facade that, oh, look, anybody can become a party to a class action lawsuit, the reality is that most Americans out here, myself included, want no part of the legal system, certainly aren't looking to become a part of some class action lawsuit. God knows what that costs. God knows how to find an attorney willing to do that. And God knows whether it's even worth it to get in front of this administration and knowing full well what they may do. And that really is the sad reality out of all of this.
It is the sad reality, but I will try to find a little bit of a ray of light amidst that sort of dark yet accurate recitation that you just gave. And that is, when you bring class action lawsuits, you might just have 6, 8, 10, 12 named plaintiffs, and you will ask the court to certify as a class all similarly situated individuals, like, for example, all undocumented women who may have given birth over the past year, or who are expected to deliver their children in the next 6 months. I'm just arbitrarily making up a class, right? So yes, I'm with you. And, it almost feels to me like, in order to protect your rights, you're going to have to be kind of a person of privilege and means. Maybe we'll just have like we have poll taxes that were designed over the years and the decades to discourage minority voters. Let's just have a court tax, right?
Right.
So if you're not, willing to put $10,000 up front to have a lawyer represent you and vindicate your constitutional rights in court, well, then you're just out of luck. I have a feeling the Alitos and the Thomases of the world might be fine with that kind of an arrangement.
Right. Well, look, this is still very much a live ball, so we will stay on top of whatever happens next, including other court cases we see, as the issue of birthright citizenship is decided on the merits eventually, not just the ability of the courts to impose these nationwide injunctions, but they're actually going to rule on the merits of eliminating birthright citizenship, and what happens next with these class action lawsuits as well. So for those who are watching, if you'd like to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. So if you're not yet subscribed to our channels, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.